All right, we're going to interrupt that last input, if you will, of the Acting Minister of Police, Firoz Cachalia. We know that the members of Parliament are basically putting supplementary questions to him, which basically tells us that the entire exercise for the day there, at least it is done. So we're going to bring you some quick analysis on what we have heard here at the ad hoc committee, but the bulk of it is going to be the Madlanga Commission, because that's where a lot of interesting information came from. And we're going to do that with security expert Dorothy Mmushi. She is in studio with me tonight versus the virtual platform that we normally see her from. Good evening to you and thank you for your time. The question around whether or not Minister Mchunu applied himself, conducted due diligence before the decision to disband the PKTT. This is a question that Acting Minister Firoz Cachalia has had to deal with in Parliament, and it does appear that he himself has some serious reservations around this. I know that you watched the Madlanga inquiry for most of the day, so I'm happy for you to take us straight there. What's your view on this particular standpoint by General Khumalo?
Good evening, Xoli, and good evening to the viewers at home. My standpoint is based on the evidence that was led by General Khumalo. Not enough due diligence was done by the minister in his decision. And we can base that on the fact that there's a lot of things that he did not put into perspective before taking that decision. Things such as looking at the effectiveness of the political killings task team. And the manner in which it was done was sort of a rush. And we must also put into consideration that there has been allegations that his decision was influenced by other factors. Yeah. So that might then also lead us to believe that perception, that there was ulterior motive to that decision. It's
interesting that you point that little fact at the end. Well, we call it a fact, but it is a fact because it's come out of the commission today, up until, of course, it is challenged, that Khumalo believes, and strongly so, that Minister Mchunu was influenced by General Sibiya on this decision to disband, and add to that the freezing of posts in crime intelligence. By the way, this is the same person who, in March, was in agreement that the PKTT is doing well. I'm referring to Sibiya here, according to Khumalo. So it talks perhaps to your point, it supports your point that this was a rush decision, perhaps influenced by other considerations.
Well, that is correct. And also, if you look at what General mentioned today, was himself and the National Commissioner had engagements, and they had tried to also indicate to the minister that it's not advisable for the PKTT to be disbanded in a rush situation. It should be a gradual transition. Yeah. And even after his attempts of presenting strategies of how to disband the PKTT, there was still that influence from the minister and General Sibiya, who said this must be done as a matter of urgency. So that does really bring about doubt to society to say, how do you disband a task team that has so much impact on crime and you want to do it immediately?
Yeah, and perhaps not to belabor the point, General Khumalo going further to say the actual terminology around this, where Minister Mchunu uses the word immediately, and then there is a word, a phasing out period. He says, actually, this, in the right context within the security arrangement, it should be the demobilization of this PKTT. And he says, you can't demobilize in one day what it took you 4 years to demobilize. I just thought I would point that out. But there are specifics that I'd like us to talk to before we end our conversation, Dorothy. Brigadier Ngwashu. This is someone who, on the 16th of April, 2025, attempts, this is according to General Khumalo, attempts to retrieve the docket pertaining to the investigation around Katiso Molefe. But this request is not acceded to by Khumalo, who says to Brigadier Ngwashu, well, if this is a request from the Gauteng Commissioner of the Police that you need this docket, tell him to call me. And he says that decision never came. What should we make of this?
Yeah, and we'll go further to what General Khumalo mentioned, is that that call never happened. There was no call from the superiors of Brigadier Ngwashu to say, can that docket be handed over? So it is a thought that ponders to say that is a possible interference, and maybe he should be called in to explain why was there a need for him to have access to that docket? And what was he going to do with it?
And I think it's important for us to point out, because in the last few weeks, I haven't seen General Mtombeni. This is the Commissioner of Police in Gauteng. Instead, it's the acting Police Commissioner in Gauteng, General Kekana, who is briefing the media, whether it be the attacks that happened at the weekend in Reche Park or the Westbury killings. What does that tell us about perhaps how heavily implicated General Tommy Mtombeni might be? His absence is clearly visible for all to see.
Well, yeah, I guess for now, clearly that is speculation, but I'm sure he's also one of the people that will be called as a potential witness to come and iron out his involvement in this whole saga. So his absence, we can say maybe it's based on a possibility of him knowing that there might be something coming his way, or it might just be him lying low until this whole turmoil dies out. So let's wait it out and see.
Here's a point that is going to possibly, or a discussion topic that is likely to get South Africans hot under the collar, because you watch on social media and you can tell that people are so interested in what's coming out of this. There is all kinds of commentary there, and you can tell that they actually are in support of what is happening, the investigations. The dockets, the PKTT dockets, a 4-month period where they are simply inactive. Remember, these dockets are moved from KZN to Pretoria, and we have confirmation today from the man who leads this team that with the dockets being in Gauteng, the investigators simply did no work. What should South Africans think?
Yeah, that is rather disappointing, because that's an indication that those investigations were then at a standstill, and they were clearly not reallocated to new investigators. So that's also a disservice to justice, because with any investigation, a 4-month period is a period that can be used to speed up the investigation and to either conclude on the investigation and put it to bed. But if now a whole docket is sitting for 4 months without being touched, without the docket being inspected, it defeats the ends of justice. So I'm sure that is something that is disappointing to the complainants in those dockets.
You talk about defeating the ends of justice, and it perhaps leads us perfectly then to another topic that they've dealt with as they concluded the questioning of General Khumalo, and that is the retaliation against the PKTT and its members. And the topic there is that these members were targeted. General Khumalo saying that upon realizing that the PKTT was clearly a target of some within the police force, some of them were arrested, and he is among those. There were 7 senior officers within crime intelligence that have a case that is ongoing right now. And he says that this is part and parcel of the retaliation efforts. Is that, in fact, should we take him at his word, given the charges that they face?
We should take his word for now, because, Kholi, I'll explain this. We have seen recently that within law enforcement, when the best or the cream of the crop are doing their best to investigate and to bring about justice, they do end up being targeted. there's individuals who would use law enforcement as a tool to demoralize, to demotivate, to also bring to doubt the credibility of investigators by putting counter investigations against them. And this happens, as I said, to the best of the best. And until we get to a point where we should stop law enforcement from bringing up crumpled charges against investigators. It has happened many a times in the past. So we cannot put that to doubt. Let the process take its course. Let him be taken to court. And if those charges are dropped against him, maybe there should be action taken against those police officers who arrested the general.
It's the point
and
that
his team.
It is the point that we are going to end our conversation on, because at some stage towards the closure, he is asked specifically about the charges against them. And in the main, it's around the appointment of this person, this engineer, who was taken from BMW and is given a very senior rank. I think it's that of brigadier in the police force. And the question is, was that a sound decision? Was that perhaps a legal thing to do? And he responds in the affirmative. But I want us to talk specifically to the role of this person and what it is that the police or crime intelligence was looking for, because this is a person who is employed from outside the police force, and they then are parachuted to this senior post. He says, we were looking for a qualified mechatronics engineer. He's gone some distance to explain what a mechatronics engineer is. Firstly, do you think that this is indeed a valid case based on his explanation that they should be facing charges in this regard? And what is a mechatronics engineer and what is their use in the police force?
Okay, I think we need to look at it in a professional context to say, if you identify that there's a skill that you need within the work environment, and I'm glad that he mentioned issues around how the political killings task team was assembled. It was a multidisciplinary team. Now, in the world of forensic investigations or investigations of organized crime, you need various skill sets to be able to carry out certain investigations. So it might be a valid point that maybe they did indeed have the need for that expertise. Now, what would be questionable is when the post was advertised, were those requirements set? Did this particular individual have the required requirements as per the advert? And if he followed due process in being appointed? Because you must remember, sometimes it is a good idea to be innovative in bringing about new skills and innovative ways to fight crime. So if bringing on board someone with a different skill set is what was at the mind of the general at the time, then why not? But let the investigation also prove whether this was irregular or whether it was an unlawful act.
Dorothy Mmushi, thank you very much for your analysis tonight, and thank you for making time for us to join us in studio here.